The internet has changed the game of real estate forever. You can flip homes anywhere in the world without ever seeing them in person. In today's video, I'm gonna walk you through my entire virtual house flipping process so that you can see what it's like to flip a home virtually from a distance without ever laying your eyes on it in person. And if you are new to the channel, my name's Justin Yahrong. I'm a real estate investor and entrepreneur here in Las Vegas. I've made hundreds of videos teaching people about real estate, and the goal of this channel is to help you grow your money and mindset. Also, if you wanna see more personal content, follow me on Instagram at Justin Yahrong. So let me walk you through my entire process of what it's like to flip a home virtually. So there are really 4 parts to flipping a home, whether you're virtual or not. Really, you gotta find the deal, you gotta get into escrow to actually buy the deal. Once you buy the deal, you have to make sure you actually rehab it to fix it up, and then you sell it later. So like those are the 4 parts to buying a deal. And surprisingly, flipping a home virtually is not so much different than flipping it in person. So I actually started flipping houses while I was in person, and it was in the same market. So I started flipping in Fresno, California, and that's where I lived at the time. And as I flipped these houses, I was the one going out to the properties all the time, checking them out. And then I finally moved to Vegas. So I moved to Vegas last year, and when I moved to Vegas, I had a big decision to make. I could either continue to flip houses in Fresno, California from a distance. I could try to find and flip houses in Vegas, or I can just get a job, because this is my full-time thing. This was my income. I decided, let me try to do this whole thing virtually. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I knew how to flip houses, but never had done it virtually. So really, there were only just minor adjustments that I had to make, and let me walk you through one particular deal so you can kind of see the entire process. Okay, so my most recent virtual house flip deal, it was actually in Fresno, California, and I found it from a wholesaler. Now this wholesaler, believe it or not, I actually found this wholesaler on Tinder. So I find deals a lot of different ways. Like I find deals looking on the MLS, I find deals cold calling, I find deals from other wholesalers, and I find deals from social media. So these are kind of like my 4 main categories of finding deals. And this one happened to be a wholesaler, but I happened to find her on Tinder. Here's how I found this wholesaler. Basically, when I was in Fresno, California, I knew I was gonna be moving to Vegas, and I knew I was single at the time, and I wanted to use Tinder. So I tried to open it up in Fresno, California. Never used Tinder in my life, the dating app. This is not sponsored, by the way, but basically I used Tinder, swiped a bunch of times, never looked at it again. And then I came to Vegas, and once I hit Vegas, I was like, what, let me open up Tinder again. I'm single, I've never used the app. Let me see, try to learn the new area. I ended up seeing all these different matches from Fresno because I was swiping at first in Fresno. And there's this one girl who reached out, and she's like, hey, you're not in Fresno, are you? I was like, no, I actually moved to Vegas. And then she ended up looking at my Instagram profile, because I think I linked my Instagram profile in my Tinder. And because I posted so much about real estate investing and buying houses, she asked me, hey, do you buy houses? And it shocked me. I was like, yeah, I do buy houses. Do you have one for sale? And she told me, yeah, actually, she was a new wholesaler, and she had a deal under contract that she found on the MLS. And she pitched it to me. She's like, hey, do you want to buy it for this price? I ended up making my offer. I was not the highest offer by any means, but my pitch was like, hey, I want to have a long-term business relationship. And I got the deal. And so that's how I got this particular deal. And I did it all virtually. I never got to see the house. When she was telling me about the house, she sent me different pictures and videos that she took. So I was basing my offer just on the pictures and the videos that she took, and kind of trusting her. And I never met her in my life. So it was kind of weird. Different for me for sure, but as I was looking at the house, I was trying to estimate the rehab cost from just the pictures and the videos. I was able to calculate the ARV for the offer, and I was just able to crunch my numbers, because you don't need to be in person to crunch your numbers. So once I crunched the numbers, I figured out a good offer price. I offered it to her, and I negotiated well, apparently, because I ended up making money on the deal. But this is how I found the deal, completely virtual. So I know it's kind of a weird way to find a deal, but it's from a wholesaler. You can definitely find deals from other wholesalers in whatever market you're trying to go into, just by building and making relationships. So that was a wholesaler relationship. You can also find deals from the MLS. You can find deals by cold calling yourself or hiring cold callers. You can find deals by mailing people, texting sellers. There's a lot of different ways to find deals. This one just happened to be from a wholesaler. So this is how I found this particular deal. Now, once I found it, made the offer, they accepted the offer, we got under contract. So now we are in escrow, stage 2. And actually, before I get into the escrow period, let me also explain the one thing that I did need, because I was virtual, was to have someone on the ground to help me kind of vet the property, or make sure the property was actually in good condition, it wasn't fall into the ground. And I honestly relied on the wholesaler, the girl. And so I asked her, I was like, hey, what's the condition of the home? Can you be my boots on the ground to help me identify what this thing looks like? And ideally, it's someone on your team to help you identify, so that you have a trusted party on your side, because she was in it for like, monetary benefit. Ideally, of course, it's better to have a boots on the ground on your team so that you completely trust them when they say, hey, no, the house isn't still in good shape. But I trusted her because this was new at the time. I'm new to virtual flipping, and I relied on her. So if you're planning to flip houses virtually, like, I highly recommend for you to have someone on the ground on your team, or someone just a friend of yours, to come check out the property whenever you buy it, so that you know what you're buying is actually in decent condition. Okay, so back to escrow. So this is stage 2, escrow period. Now during the escrow period, a lot of different things happen. Like, I wanted to get some type of inspection, not like a full-on home inspector, but really just someone on my team to kind of walk through the property. Now this is when I just had a friend of mine. I was like, hey, can you check out this property? Like, let me figure out like if the home's in good condition. So I did get a boots on the ground after locking up the deal. And when I say locking up the deal, I'm meaning like I made the offer, they accepted the offer. So now we have a contract by both parties and the deal is locked up. So that's what I mean by locking up a deal. Once we got the deal locked up, I had a friend of mine kind of check out the property, make sure it's actually in decent condition, like the condition that I expected. And it was, like, it was in good condition. Well, it wasn't good condition. It was like the condition that I expected, which is bad condition, which is perfect. Bad condition is very different than like very bad condition. So it was in bad condition, which is what I wanted. But honestly, after I had my boots on the ground check out the property, there wasn't much from there that was any different than flipping a house in person. Like, I had to talk to the title company and make sure everyone's on the same page as far as the wholesaler getting their assignment fee. I also had to make sure that my lending was in place, and I didn't have to be in person to talk to a lender. Like, I use a national hard money lender to help me buy homes very often, and so I just use them. And so I had to make sure I get my documents in place, the hard money lender is in communication with the title officer, so that everyone is on the same page that I am buying this home at this price. And it was pretty simple. Like, there was nothing else necessary that a virtual person would need in the escrow period that an in-person flipper would need. So it was basically the same exact thing. The only difference is if you wanted to be at the inspections yourself, you would have to have the inspector go to the house and have your boots on the ground, your person that you trust, also meet them at the house, so that your inspector can speak to the boots on the ground, and the boots on the ground can communicate whatever the inspector said to you. But honestly, you can do all that same thing without the boots on the ground. Like, you can just have the inspector come to the property, either have a lockbox on the home, or have the wholesaler or someone else meet someone at the property, and you can just learn about the property from their inspection report of the inspector. Like, it's not that hard. So that was the escrow period, nothing too crazy. But then after the escrow period, once I actually bought the property and then I made sure the wholesaler got paid, now we got to start the rehab process. And for me, the rehab process was actually a little bit different than usual, being virtual versus being in person. So when I was in person and when I was flipping these houses, I was doing all the in-person stuff. So like, I wasn't doing the actual work. Like, I hired out general contractors to do the work and to get the bids. But I was the one to meet these contractors out in person, bring them out to the properties, get the bids from them, look at the bids with them, decide on what bid to get, or maybe make adjustments as needed, and then putting the lockbox in the home, bringing out any other inspectors or roofers to the property. Like, this is what I did when I was doing the project manager work for the flips. Like, I was doing all this work myself. Being in Vegas and knowing my house was in Fresno, California that I was flipping, I knew myself that I did not want to fly back and forth to run a house flip. Like, I knew that was just pointless. And so what I did, I didn't really know what to do at the time, but I just called a friend of mine. She was an agent and a really good friend of mine in real estate. And I just called her and I said, hey, I need help managing a project. I don't know if you have any interest in house flipping, but you basically would be able to be the project manager. You're the one in charge of the contractors. You learn the entire house flipping process and the rehab and what goes into it without any of your risk. I'll pay for everything. I'll teach you how to do everything. I don't know what to pay you yet, but would you want to do this with me? And she was super excited for it. Like, she wanted to do it. We didn't even have a price set yet, but she's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I trust you're gonna pay what's fair. And I did pay what's fair. Like, actually what we ended up agreeing on, I paid her more because I found out that she did a lot more work than I expected her to. And so she was happy with it, I was happy with it. But basically, that job that I hired out, that was one of my biggest fears, because as the project manager, her duties for that house flip was to bring out the other contractors to get the bids, to walk through with me on FaceTime, like through the home, so that we can kind of envision the home and like the scope of work and the vision of the home, what it's gonna look like. She was a big part of creating the vision for the house. and bringing out the contractors. And then once we decided on a contractor, like I picked the contractor, once we decided on one, she was the one essentially to babysit them. So as these contractors were doing their work, she'd be the one in charge. She was essentially like the point person, the point of contact, where these contractors to come to her and say like, okay, here's what we've done so far, like when's my next check? And so I actually did have her write checks for me. I would still sign them, but she would write the checks for me. And then once I signed them, she would literally pay the contractor. So the contractors never had to talk to me again, which is pretty great. I just had to know from her, I was like, hey, are you sure you checked out that they did this and this and this and this? Like, are you sure? Because it was still like a training process. So she loved it, but we did that all the way through for the project. And once it was done, like, she also was in charge of like checking on the home at least twice a week to make sure there's no squatters, the contractors are there. And if the contractors are not there, like her job was essentially to call the contractors and say, hey, like you're not at the house, like what's going on? Like why is no one working on the home? So it's kind of a tough job actually. And there were even a lot of squatters, and I was kind of concerned for her safety for a portion of it too, because you know, there's squatters at the home. She's a female. I don't think she carries a weapon or anything. Sometimes I get calls from her like, hey, like, someone's in the house. And I'd have to tell her like, hey, like don't go in, like unless you're fully comfortable, but I'm not even comfortable. Just like call the police, bring them out there, wait, like stay in your car, make sure you're safe, and wait till the police come. So like the project manager, it's a tough position because you have to deal with contractors, you gotta deal with squatters, you gotta deal with timelines, you gotta deal with me, like the boss, and it's a lot of work. But ideally, I was only able to hire out well because I understood that position fully. Like I did that myself for a few deals already, and I knew what it took to manage a project. And if you don't know what it takes to manage a project, that's okay, you're gonna figure it out. Like I promise you, you're gonna figure it out, as long as you just kind of jump and go for it. But that was my process and that's what I did. And once we got the property fixed, there were a lot of squatters on this one actually, that was horrible. But after we got the property fixed, her job after the rehab had finished was also to continue to check on the property a couple times a week, even though no one was working on it, just because of so many squatters. Like it was in kind of a bad area of Fresno, California. And with all these squatters, like her job was essentially to communicate with me and the police of like, hey, squatters are here, alarm went off, the police would call me, I say, hey, I'll go out to the property, and like that was kind of the routine every single week until the home got sold. Anyways, like the one thing that was different from flipping virtually than it was from flipping in person, it was that one project manager role. It was the role that I wasn't sure I knew how to hire out yet, and I did not know how to hire out yet fully. But I did it anyways because I knew I needed to. And in a sense, me moving from Fresno, California to Vegas, like it was such a good decision because it literally forced me to hire out that position. And like, if I didn't move, I would be stuck in that position for every single house flip of mine because I never knew it was possible. And if I were to be stuck in that position today, a lot of my time, I wouldn't be able to spend it making videos like this for you. A lot of my time now is spent creating content because it's one of the high dollar activities of my business. But after the rehab was done, all that happened to happen now was sell the home. And so I just got a realtor to list the home. And a big difference for me was like, I would list my properties before because I'm a realtor, or I was a realtor at the time, and I had the ability to list my own property. But after I moved to Vegas, I no longer could list my properties efficiently because I'm not able to be there in person and like see the property. So instead of me listing the property, I just got another realtor friend of mine to list the property. And when she listed it, like we just sold it. And once my realtor listed it, then we just had to kind of deal with the squatters. I also had my project manager still check up on the property because of these squatters. But then we eventually got it sold, and I never had to see the property in person during the sale, which I wouldn't do it anyways if I was in person. So that part wasn't so much different for me being virtual versus in person. But that was the entire process. Like it's not as hard as you might think. Like the key differences are just having the boots on the ground before buying the home, and then having the project manager after you buy the home to manage the contractors. Like those are the key differences. Those two people, they could be the same person too, but those two positions, that was the game changer when it came to flipping houses virtually versus doing it in person. And if you want to do it yourself, I promise you it's not that hard. Also, if you want help to grow your real estate business, whether you're brand new or if you've already got deals on your belt, click on the link in the description, fill out the application, and someone from my team will reach out to you. Peace.